Today on the Tearsheet Podcast.
The problem statement was, hey, from our clients, can you bring your services? Can you embed all of what JP Morgan offers? Can you embed it within my ecosystem without me having to embark upon a large, IT project or project that requires significant budget or spending? Essentially, can I download JP Morgan into my environment?
Welcome to the Tearsheet Podcast. I'm Zack Miller. Today we have another special episode. We're talking about bank fintech partnerships by studying some of the best, most impactful ones out there. We have JP Morgan's Jason Tiede and FISPAN's Lisa Shields on the show to talk about their partnership that essentially embeds JP Morgan's payments and treasury functionality into its client's ERP environment. This partnership won Tearsheet's Bank Fintech Partnership Award for the CFO's Choice in 2020. We discuss how the two parties met and why JPM chose to partner with FISPAN. We discuss best practices in standing up a good working relationship with two vastly different companies and cultures. Lisa Shields and Jason Tiede are my guests today on the Tearsheet Podcast.
Sure, thanks. Lisa Shields. I'm the founder and CEO of FISPAN. Super excited to be here today. Founded the business in 2016, so we're just coming up to our fourth year now. Excited to start talking about how we develop relationships with financial institutions and our product.
Great. And Jason, can you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. This is Jason Tiede from JP Morgan. I run the innovation and fintech partnership team for our wholesale payments business. So our team is a global team in U.S., Latin America, Europe, and Asia Pacific regions, and we really are focused on testing and launching net new products and services for our clients, and doing so in the most nimble way and via partnerships with emerging technology and fintech companies that are in their earlier stages. So glad to be here and to chat with both of you.
And the reason Jason and Lisa are here because JP Morgan and FISPAN won the Ecosystem Award of the Tearsheet 2020 Bank FinTech Partnerships. So we're really here to talk about this partnership and dive deeper. Jason, can you talk about sort of, I guess, the project that you embarked upon, or at least the early process that eventually led you to collaborate with FISPAN? We
Absolutely. So, I'll take it from a high level to start, and meaning, broadly speaking, we on our team spend a lot of time with our clients, both sharing kind of the perspectives of where we see the transaction banking payments businesses going, as well as, more importantly, listening to our clients who are treasurers and finance professionals, and really kind of hearing where they see their businesses going, their groups going, and kind of the sort of evolving and likely soon to be unmet needs. And so, we spend a great deal of time, again, trying to understand what that client demand is going to look like in the future. And then on the other side of sort of our jobs, we spend a good deal of time with the venture capital and fintech and emerging technology community to see where we can find companies in their early stages that are kind of developing novel solutions and novel services to kind of meet those new client demands. And so, as it specifically relates to this opportunity, what we call the exposed nerve, which would really be another way to say kind of the client need or the client problem statement was, hey, I'm a treasurer or CFO of a fast-growing tech company or a health life sciences company. I use one of the cloud-based ERP systems for my kind of daily jobs and my team's daily jobs, like NetSuite, for example. And as our business is growing, we really would like to use JP Morgan's global payments capabilities and receivables capabilities. But the real challenge is, we don't necessarily have a ton of resources on the client side to do a more traditional implementation that would require, file testing and kind of lots of integration work. So the problem statement was, hey, from our clients, can you bring your services? Can you embed all of what JP Morgan offers? Can you embed it within my ecosystem without me having to embark upon a large, IT project or project that requires significant budget or spending? Essentially, can I download JP Morgan into my environment?
Great. And so, Lisa, from your perspective, FISPAN is set up to work with large banking partners like this. Can you talk about, I guess, how you're aligned internally to be able to work with such large organizations?
Yeah, thanks. And, the truth of the matter is when we started working with JP Morgan Chase and Jason's group, we didn't think that our first clients were going to be, the largest global bank.
Right?
So we did, as a startup right from the beginning, our business, the 30,000 foot view on our business and our business model hasn't changed, and we didn't really pivot from our service delivery concept. So to answer your question specifically about being able to work with a financial institution, we did the things that you'd expect to do, have a high degree of attention and fidelity to things like, InfoSec and operational designations that make it possible for an institution of the stature of JP Morgan Chase to work with us. But, quite frankly, when we first started working with Jason's group, I'm sure there were raised eyebrows on their side. But, given that they were looking to work with earlier stage companies, we took a walk first approach for both sides so that we could, grow into some of the, ultimate client servicing and scale out issues, not from the beginning, but as the relationship evolved.
So Lisa, to that end, Jason, we'll come to you in a second. How did you ensure that you guys were talking about, talking in the same language, that, pacing was adequate on both sides? Like, were there cultural issues that you had to contend with as well? Sorry, that's to you.
Sorry, is that to me? Right.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, there weren't. And this was, one of the biggest surprises. Expectations were really clear. So where an institution actually has a, innovations group that has good working relationships with the business lines, the cultural expectations around walking us through and setting our expectations, quite frankly, on the vendor onboarding process, on what it means to go from a POC, to pilot with live customers and live transactions. That wasn't, a shock or an unexpected experience for us. I think it'll be interesting from Jason's perspective if, from his side, there were, another perspective.
Jason, you want to chime in there?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Lisa hit the nail on the head with the term, kind of cultural fit. And I'd say right away, and part of, I guess, the story, or to more fully answer your, the genesis of the partnership question, there was a little bit of serendipity involved, which I think there always is. I mean, a lot of people won't admit it after the fact, but, Lisa and I met as her company was ramping up and as my team was ramping up. And, it was, it was over an event, actually an event called Finnovate, which is a chance for entrepreneurs to get together with larger companies. And, we sort of hit it off in terms of, really kind of, I think, understanding this market opportunity and having, and some of this we'll get to later, I think, as we discuss sort of like decision-making process, but, really, Lisa's credibility and her, understanding of, working with a bank and what it takes, meaning the yin and the yang, right? Yin and the yang of both large scale access to clients, but also needing to have the right controls and security in place. And so, our teams essentially sort of went on the road together, and just that fact alone of kind of wanting to go on a journey, both physically and from a business perspective, was kind of clear from the beginning. So it was pretty nice working from kind of like that fresh board on both sides.
Yeah,
So
and
Jason,
I'll jump in there.
go,
And
please,
to
Lisa.
say, to sort of augment that, Jason found us and we found JP Morgan Chase at a time in FISPAN's evolution where we absolutely could be very flexible. And when I say very flexible, I remember there were and are two aspects to FISPAN's underlying thesis as a business. One is that corporates and businesses will want to primarily work within their accounting and ERP systems, and financial institutions need to be embedded and have their services more easily consumable within those interfaces. So we were just over a year and a half old when, actually just over a year when we first met JP Morgan Chase. And we presented that aspect of our thesis and a very early, I'm going to say, minimal viable product concept of what the user experience would look like. On the other half of FISPAN, we believe that fintechs, can very much benefit from partnerships with banks and use financial institutions as distributions. So we had spent quite a bit of time, and effort and money for a first-year company building out, what I'm going to call the other half of FISPAN's thesis. And what was interesting about the time that we engaged with JP Morgan Chase is, I clearly remember this, and I'm sure Jason does as well, him looking at both sides of FISPAN and saying, I think we'll start, there, and the there is on ERP integrations and embedded banking. And from our perspective, FISPAN was, like, cool, let's do that, and let's make that our market entrance. Whereas if we had have met 5 years later, when FISPAN has, a more, rigid aspect of, what a SaaS revenue looks like, what a solution looks like, we might have been the one less able to be flexible to the bank's needs at one point in time.
Interesting. So Jason, back to you. And it sounds like your group, is set up to work with earlier stage companies. Do you want to talk about, I guess, how that interfaces throughout the organization, what that structure looks like, and I guess how decision making is done?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, in a sort of backwards way, I'll answer by saying kind of the ultimate arbitrator, at least in our model, is the client. I'll talk about the internal piece in a minute, but one of the kind of and again, in the early days, one of the philosophical questions we were trying to ask was, could you really apply the design-based thinking approach to products on the corporate or wholesale banking side? So, we all know that you can do prototyping and A/B testing in labs on the retail side of banking, but I think if you rewind the clock a few years ago, there really wasn't that ability to kind of test and learn and bring clients at the beginning of a product development life cycle. Traditionally, banks had internal working groups, right? And then requirements, and then technical build, and then, sort of towards that later stage is when you involve clients. What, our teams between FISPAN and our team did was say, look, we've got a good thesis of what we think our clients are going to want. Let's just do something wild and build a prototype and get on the road, and literally on the road on the West Coast saying, well, let's go meet clients and show them what we've got. And the incredible experience from that was, and Lisa we could argue the numbers, but I would say we probably got 70% or so right in the prototype. But in every client meeting, there'd be this sort of 30% piece that the clients would articulate that we wouldn't have figured out within our four walls. And that 30% became the secret sauce. And so, getting to the sort of how do we prepare internally, really, it was that client need, that client as the arbitrator, as the sort of guiding light. But the other big piece was we brought our sort of middle and back office teams into the dialogue and early in the, very early on. So, how could we make sure to think about their, what they would need from a design standpoint and an execution standpoint, assuming it made this into a full kind of commercialization mode, which we are today. And so I think, it was kind of bringing the people around the table together, but again, the outside in feedback was the winning, the winning formula.
And it also sounds, and this is over to you, Lisa, that it sounded like there was a beachhead with the ERP integration, but that you've since launched some other functionality there. Can you talk about sort of how that's evolved and maybe where the relationship might go in the future?
Sure. Yeah, no, we're really concentrating on the ERP and accounting integrations and broadening the number of platforms, the number of businesses, and the number of, as Jason calls it, back office or banking services to be integrated with it. So we're really focused on that, embedded banking, contextual banking service delivery. And that's where we see the relationship really moving forward as well. But from our perspective, the most innovative thing, that just to pick up on what Jason was talking about, he called it design-based thinking. From FISPAN's perspective, we couldn't believe that we were allowed in the room with clients. So we would go and take our seat at the table as the demo dollies, and there became a big, I'm going to say fight, but it was an honored position for an engineer to come along and just listen to what the customers were saying. So Jason, I think you were a little bit generous by saying we got 70% right. But what I can tell you happened was pretty much after every client engagement, and that means like a demo and just listening to what the customers were saying about the product and their opinion of it, there would be a turn of the build like the next week. And that was, I think that built the most excitement, not just from the FISPAN side, but internally with the JP Morgan Chase folks from product that were, Jason, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the folks on our, assigned to the FISPAN, innovation product got a kick out of it because they had an opportunity to see products evolving very, very quickly that might be, a little bit different from what they're used to.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the posters I have in my office is of a basketball player doing a pivot move. To Lisa's point, it was almost like between FISPAN team and JP Morgan team really kind of pivoting the product very quickly in the early days, and that it's that same characteristic that you want out of that you see in many successful startups, right? Is not being overly rigid with saying like, hey, this is our product, we're not moving from it, but being able to both technically and philosophically move off of that. And so that is, everyone talks about the nimbleness of fintechs and the great marriage between banks and fintechs, but to actually, what does that look like in real life? For us, it was pretty exciting to see it actually come to fruition.
And while you're here, can you talk about, I guess, success metrics, Jason, for like how do you judge the success of this partnership? You've talked a lot about the focus on serving the end customer, the client.
Sure. Yep.
Like what's your thinking about that?
Yeah, look, we've been, I'd say, sort of overwhelmed with the success. We'll obviously we can't go into specific names, but in terms of sort of scope and scale to provide some kind of way to put your head around it. We've got over 40 of our large and fast growing technology clients on the platform already, with about 50 to 60 more in the sandbox / implementation side. And in terms of dollars and cents, we're seeing this drive significant revenues, significant liquidity, and client balance deposits, which we love. And within the first year, looking at in the billions of dollars flowing through it. So by all metrics, we're thrilled with the client receptivity and the performance.
And Lisa, as a technology provider in this relationship, like how do you guys think about success in the partnership?
So we're thinking about success in the partnership along 3 dimensions. One is, more businesses using it, as Jason said, and driving all the things that are good for the bank and good for the end customers. We see going into new markets, so expanding geographically as like interesting and important. But almost most important, I do see the opportunity for working with, such a large and, from a B2B market share within North America. I see this as an opportunity to, fundamentally change behaviors, or be a component, I should say, be a component of the ultimate digitization of, B2B commerce in North America. Once you get endpoints, bank-sponsored endpoints into the business system of record of trade partners, you can start to roll on and make better use of underlying rail innovations that are starting to come into the market. So that's the long-term, vision that I have for this relationship. That is super exciting to me personally.
That's great. And Jason, back to you. I guess we have time for one last question. We sort of hit on this earlier in the conversation, but what is your vision for where you take this partnership in the future?
Yeah. So, I think Lisa is spot on with, look, we see this as embedded financial services that we started in a few ERP platforms. We think there's other, industry specific, tools and platforms where we can embed ourselves, expanding geographically. And then also from our standpoint, expanding products and services. I mean, this kind of end-to-end connectivity with our clients is going to allow for new products based around, what everyone loves to talk around, truly around data products and different ways to look at credit and client needs and health. But I think, and then to sort of leave you with some little intrigue, we're also, and I won't talk about it, Lisa, so don't worry, but we also have a few moonshot ideas that, candidly, this success and sort of the doubles and triples will allow us to take a swing at. So we got some cool stuff cooking.
Jason, Lisa, I wanted to thank you for joining us on this podcast, and congratulations to both JP Morgan and FISPAN for winning the Bank Fintech Partnership Award 2020. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.